You know those fridges that you can find in the shops, those ones that have big glass doors. That man from Zim would say that he would be hearing voices that will be coming from those fridges that he had in his small canteen. That is how it all started. But some people said that this man, there was this other certain man who had came to consult with him. That man, when he came to consult with this man from Zim, he thought that this guy, he was a powerful traditional healer from Zim. Then he convinced that man from Zim to go with him to his house because he wanted his house to be protected from witches. When they went there, that is when people said that this man from Zim, when he came back, one day he just rushed into the saloon and he kept on screaming and saying that there was a snake. He was seeing a snake. This snake was just everywhere. That is how that man from Zim started to run mad. So what happened is that the local traditional healer whom I was now working for, he told me that he wanted to help this other certain client of his. This man, most of the times, he only helped people that were rich, because whenever they would come to consult with him, if you were to look at their cars, you will see that these people, they are very rich. He then told me that there was this other certain client of his who wanted to bury his goblins because they were now many. He could no longer control them. So he wanted to throw some of them away. So he told me that if I was going to assist him, this was going to become my paycheck. And at that time, I was really desperate for money. I was excited at first, but after we were told the details, I panicked. I then refused because as for me, this was just too much. But that man from Zim kept on speaking with me and he convinced me to do it. He said, "What do you have to lose? Let us just do it. Can't you see that we are going to be given a lot of money?" Initially, we were told that we had to bury that rich man inside a shallow grave, then leave him there inside that shallow grave for half a day, and to later come back and dig him up. This had to be done 7 times over and over again. But to me, this was like too much. And besides, I was about to complete my studies, so I didn't need this hassle anymore. But that was when that man from Zim suggested something. It was more like out of a movie. It was something that was very sadistic in nature. He said to that traditional healer, "How about if I can get someone for you who can dig up all of these graves, and still will you be able to give us all of the money that you promised us?" Then that traditional healer said that, "Yes, if you can do that, it will be a great idea. But you have to know that this client of mine, he wants everything to be done in secret because he is very rich. I don't want anyone who is going to expose him." Then that man from Zim, he just said it like that without ever thinking twice. He said, "We can go to the robot." There was this other robot in town where a lot of people, mostly people from Zim, used to go to that robot so that they can market for piece jobs. So he said, "We can go to that robot, hijack a few men looking for work, and we will force them to dig up the graves that you want." And just like that, the plan was made, and that traditional healer got one of those MPV buses, family buses. It had tinted windows. He then sent his boys to pick up desperate men that were looking for any kind of work opportunities at the robots. Then as for me, they told me that I could not go with the team because the moment that I will start speaking, my accent will be so suspicious. So I was left behind. That man from Zim went with that man's boys, and when they reached the place where a lot of people used to market in that town, they pretended as if they were from a construction company looking for 5 builders. Then the men from Zim rushed and got inside that car. After they had gotten into the car, as the car was being driven, some of that traditional healer's boys, they pulled out guns, and then they started to blindfold those guys from Zim. Then we were taken to that man's village. I went as well. This traditional healer, the village from where he came from, he had 2 houses. One that he used whenever he will be doing rituals for his clients. He used to stay at that other house. No one stays there. Then he had his other family house where some of his wives stay because he's not married to one wife. That man also came to that place. Even the car that he was driving, that rich man who had the ceremony which was supposed to be performed for him, he was driving a very big car. He was treated as if he was a president at that time. Those men from Zim who had been kidnapped at the robot, they were staying in another room that was empty, but they were always blindfolded and always chained together. What we'll do is that early in the morning, we will be waken up so early in the morning, and that traditional healer would make us all to bath. But the way that he used to make us bath, we were supposed to bath without using a towel or a soap, and the water was very cold. He even bathed with the same water. After we had bathed, then we would travel to this other forest. But when we would go there, some of his wives would have prepared lunch for us so that we won't starve whilst we'll be in the forest. So the rituals were like this. We would wake up early in the morning, then go to the forest. Then we would remove the blindfold from those men, and they will be shown a new spot to dig. This thing, it happened for 7 days. After digging that grave, then that traditional healer would go to that grave, put some herbs in that grave. Then those guys from Zim that had been kidnapped, they will be forced to bury that man. But the way that they used to bury this man, they would leave a spot on his face so that he will be able to breathe again. After his burial, we will blindfold those men again. So we used to take these guys from Zim 2 at a time each and every day when we would be traveling to that forest. So those men from Zim, they dug up 7 different graves in different areas, but in that same forest. After the whole ritual, after all of these evil things were done, those men, they were just dumped in another area. I later spoke with that guy from Zim, and I asked him if indeed they had left those 5 guys alive. He said, yes, we left them alive, but he didn't tell me in the area where they had gone to dump those 5 guys. I'm sure that those guys, they were so confused as to what had happened, because I know that it is a traumatic thing to be forced to bury a man 7 times over, and all along you'll be doing it at gunpoint. Rituals are evil, my brother. For those 9 days that these men were hijacked, there was this other man who started crying, and he was saying that he was HIV positive and he needed some ARV medication. So that traditional healer, he just went out, and when he came back, he had some pills. But when I looked at the pills, I saw that this ARV medication, they were straight from the hospital. I don't know how he had managed to get hold of those pills. I think that maybe a big deal had happened at the place where he had gone. After this deal was done, I wanted out because my heart was refusing. And I started having problems, like whenever I'll be sleeping on my left side, I'll start to have stabbing pains in my heart. I think that it was the stress, because those men, my brother, it was not like they were just kidnapped. They used to be beaten a lot. That traditional healer had said that for this ritual to work, these men, they had to suffer, because if they just buried these men without them suffering, then it was not going to work. Just like if you have lost your loved one, if you are burying your loved one, you do not do it with happiness. So these men, since they were not relatives to these men that they were being forced to bury over and over again, those men, they were beaten up, they were tortured, and then they were threatened as if one of that traditional healer's boys wanted to shoot them all. This was done so that the ritual can work. The moment that they will be digging up the grave, whilst they will be afraid, that is how the ritual will be working. Soon after that job, that man from Zim then started his own operation. Then he started running mad, and I realized that we had been playing with evil spirit. By the time that I left South Africa, what used to happen to me is that I was so traumatized. There in South Africa, if you are walking in the streets, there are people that can try to give you some papers. Most of these papers, they will be written, get money from small boys. What would happen to me is that whenever someone would attempt to give me that kind of a paper, I would just start to remember everything that had happened. It was quite an evil thing to do. Dear listeners, right there was a message that we received. Strange things do happen in this world. Yo.